Alan, for people who might not know very much about your role, maybe explain what BC's Innovation Commissioner does.
Good. No, I'm pleased to be the first BC's Innovation Commissioner, and part of the role is to increase investment in innovation in BC. And that really comes about through partnering with the federal government, partnering internationally, and encouraging in the province more investment in innovation. Innovation to some extent is our future, so further investment increases our prosperity and our ability to have a society that we would like to have for our children.
So what kinds of examples have you been pursuing in your first year in office?
Well, part of my role has been to go regularly to the federal government and to talk to the various organizations there, obviously, that have an interest in innovation, and particularly industry, science, and economic development. It's also to meet with companies, for example, that are interested in investing in British Columbia, and ones that can bring, to some extent, investment in the areas that we would like to have in British Columbia, around research and development, around business units, around the emerging economy as well.
Very interesting. So for folks who aren't able to be here at the BC Natural Resources Forum, what are some of the main topics or issues that you're wanting to talk about here?
Well, I think this is a really interesting forum. It's one I've been to several times when I was with Gino in British Columbia. And it's a forum where there's a lot of excitement about doing things in natural resources, which is great. And so part of my talk today, for example, is around innovation in operations, but also innovation in new products and innovation in new businesses. Particularly as we look into the future, we see the digital economy to some extent converging with natural resources, such that there is an ability to create new products and new businesses based on our strength in natural resources.
So where would you see kind of the greatest opportunities in innovation in BC? What are we doing well?
Yes, well, I think there are traditional areas in what we've called in the past the tech sector, but really, to some extent, every sector is becoming tech-enabled. You know, you think of, obviously smartphones and so on, but you think of going into retail stores, you think of Walmart, you think of Lululemon, etc. And each of these companies is much more enabled by technology. So no longer is there really just a distinct tech sector. All of our economy is becoming more tech-enabled. And the opportunities, I think, are for our traditional industries and our economy in general, and that includes construction, it includes retail, etc., to take advantage of the innovation that is in British Columbia in areas which may be traditionally in other areas. For example, virtual reality or artificial intelligence, all these different areas, and use that in their businesses for competitive advantage.
Wow. So in terms of examples of companies using technology to really advance what they're doing, what are some of your favorite examples from
Well,
BC?
in terms of natural resources, because we're here at the forum in Prince George, there are many companies actually who have traditionally had people who have been in the digital world, if you like, who are now applying that in various areas. And the trick really is to have a real need. So in natural resources, there are real needs. And those can be met in some cases by technology that's here in BC. So some of the examples that we've heard about at the conference are Lamazoo, for example, virtual reality company, and they can work, for example, in the forestry industry, and they can look at an area where there are trees today, and they can, through data, you can show what it's like if you don't have trees there, and you can plan to have a road, all of that sort of stuff. So there are many companies like that who are applying technology. MindSense is another one, which is really looking at, as the ore is being extracted, how to manage that and where does it go. You just have to, I went through Canfor operations here yesterday, And just to see the technology in our sawmills, for example, is quite amazing. So what used to have many people involved, for example, in sorting timber, etc., of course, can now be done through scanning timber, etc., and deciding where each piece of timber goes, and that can add value, if you like, and productivity to the operation. So there are not just technical companies involved, it's also the traditional companies adopting technology in their operations.
Excellent. Cool to hear about examples of that happening right here in Prince George. So in terms of your next year as commissioner, what items are at the top of your agenda?
Well, I think it's interesting, Camille, because I think we're at a tipping point to some extent. And that tipping point, as we look at headwinds which we have in the economy, I think what we're looking at really is how can we pull together in British Columbia to make sure that we're not pushed too hard by those headwinds, which may be commodity prices, maybe trade issues and so on, such that we look at working with the federal government internationally and the province, the communities in the province, for example, as part of that mix. And when we pull together, we can do a lot. And part, I think, of this next year is really demonstrating in the sectors that are really important to us in BC, how we can pull together and make sure that the best innovation that we have applies to those industries and we're as competitive as we can be. And that way we can mitigate some of the headwinds we see.
Excellent. Well, it's exciting that part of that conversation is happening here at the event.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Alan, what else would you like to share with us about your role or the view looking ahead in BC?
No, this is a really interesting time, and it's a time where I think it both can lead technological change can lead to change that is difficult sometimes for people, and that means that we have to sometimes adjust our jobs and so on. And I think what we should be looking at to some extent is continuous learning as we go through our jobs. We will change several times probably in our careers, and in that learning we need to understand the technical tools. It doesn't mean to say that we need to be have a degree in coding or whatever, but we do need to understand the technical tools that can help us in the jobs that we do. And that's really being a tech-enabled economy, and that's the goal over the next year.
Excellent. Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll have much more coming to you from Prince George.
Good, thanks.
Excellent.
Thanks, Camille.
Thank you.